This podcast is for singers who have music in their soul and want to be in the spotlight. We are INVICTA Vox Radio.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of INVICTA Vox Radio. As always, we are your hosts, Mike and
Angie Lee.
And today we're going to be talking about something that Aaliyah made a wonderful song about, and it's "Age Ain't Nothing But a Number."
Oh, it's so true.
Even though that's actually not in context with the song, because that's referring to something else. But in this context, we're actually talking about the limiting beliefs, limiting stories that people have when it comes to creating art, to trying to chase their dreams, to whatever it may be. We all have these limiting beliefs, and age tends to be a very popular story.
Oh, we hear that story constantly.
And this is even something that you ran into in your early 20s.
Oh, I think this is probably one of the limiting stories for me. One of the narratives in my mind that has held me back my entire life. Because when you're younger, you're like, oh, I'm too young. I can't wait till I'm older. And then all of a sudden you're too old. And then you spend the rest of your life being too old. And so I think it's just, if you're talking about limiting beliefs, things that you believe, things that are narratives in your mind, things that are stories that run on loops in your head that hold you back, I feel like the age one is a universal story that most people deal with at one point in time.
Yeah, but one of the keys to actually getting beyond this and getting past it is to first acknowledge and understand what that story is.
Right.
One thing I thought was kind of funny, like you were saying, it's like, oh, I'm too young, now I'm too old. So so what is that sweet spot, right? And it was funny.
It depends on who you talk to about it.
Right. But at one point in time, we were sitting there talking, and we had a 30-year-old who said they were too old. Mm-hmm. We had somebody that was 25 or 26 that said they were too old.
Yeah.
And we had somebody that was 19 that felt like they were too old.
They were too old already.
Right, because they're like, oh, I'm not Billie Eilish, who started when I was 13.
Right.
But it's funny because it's so arbitrary. But if you actually look at people who have made it in the music industry, there's plenty of evidence that you can still make it in your late 30s to early 40s.
Well, and that's also another arbitrary thing, is what's making it.
Right.
You know, what does that even mean? And also on whose terms?
Sure.
Because that's the whole thing with the age is, oh, I can make it in Hollywood if I'm past 22 years old.
Right.
I couldn't make it at Disney. Well, probably not Disney, but like if I'm past, my 20s, or my early 20s, and
some 45-year-old guy shows up. I'm ready to be a child star for Disney.
Gosh. Oh, that's gross to even think about. But yeah, like depending on what platform you're even talking about, and then what equates success for you. And that's so different for every person. And, can you sign a record deal when you're older? Absolutely you can. It's really comes down to, can you create an audience for what you're creating? And do you have people who want to follow you? So really, age is arbitrary. It's just a number. It's just how much life experience you have. It has nothing to do with if you can be successful or not. And, whether you're successful comes down to if you're writing good music, if you're a good singer or performer, if you have a great producer that you're working with, if you are able to have some really good marketing and have the ability to broadcast. Like, that's what determines your success. And also a little bit of luck, like if you're hitting the industry at the right time, dialing into your niche market. So there's so much more to what equates to a success. Age has nothing to do with it.
Yeah, especially in today's era where really people have more control over the distribution of their music than they ever had before, right?
Yeah. The independent artist has the most control in the industry than they've ever had, and the most broadcastability as an independent artist without a label.
Well, and that just goes to show, like, in the past, I would listen to mainstream music that was on the radio just like everybody did. This is pre-Spotify, right? And you would see music.
You old.
Yeah. And even like if you go pre-YouTube, So you would hear the music on the radio, you would see the music videos on MTV, VH1, whatever it may be, right? And that was the exposure that you had. And so there was this total representation. You would see pictures all over the place. And because distribution was controlled by the major labels,
they put a filter on everything.
They did, but you would also see everybody, right? There was like exposure across the board. Now that there's so much distribution out there, people are breaking more into music where it's like, oh, sweet, I heard this new song, I'm listening to it, but I've never watched some of these bands that I really enjoy. I've actually never watched a music video. I've never seen a picture.
Well, that's because you're streaming your music now, and Spotify will say, oh, check out this song. You like this artist, you should check out this artist. You know, so, and then you are just streaming music. You're going to playlists and listening to music you've never listened to before because it's been dinged as music that would appeal to you. And so, yeah, we're just inundated with all of this new music, and that's a positive and a negative, which we've talked about before, because you have access to so much music now as a listener and as a distributor, as an independent artist, you have this ability to distribute music, but it does water down the market. And so, you know, then the situation becomes like, how do I differentiate myself from that? But like you said, we used to only see the people who were signed with labels, the only A-list artists, and it was so nearly impossible to find underground music unless you went to local shows. And, you know, every once in a while, something would kind of take wind if bands were touring underground and you know, having a grassroots build. But that's how it worked before social media and these internet platforms that allow us to distribute our music all around the world now. And so if you consider that so many artists have the ability to target market people with pixels, and you can actually go after a certain age demographic for your listeners. And there's so many ways to dial in your marketing now and dial in who you're speaking to. And the net is super wide because it's not just your community. It's not just your region. It's everywhere. It's the whole world. You can market to the whole world. And what then was an issue of age has become irrelevant completely. You can be any age and do this. Yeah. It didn't used to be that way because, like you said, there were the gatekeepers that would shut you down if you weren't, you know, super young and hot. Like there was a gatekeeper that said no. But now there's not.
Plus, there's so many different ways to show yourself and what aspects you want to do. Like if you're not comfortable with people even seeing who you are, you could release your music and then you could create these music videos that are lyric music videos or whatever, right? You don't even have to be in front of it anymore. You don't even show
your face. Enter Sia wearing a wig over her face for like 10 years.
Right. Or Marshmello or Deadmau5 or, you know, any of these guys that DJs like to wear big weird helmets for some reason. But
that's because they're big weird helmets.
But just look at what that means, right? People don't actually even need to see who you are to really appreciate your music nowadays. And it's not this total like 360 view. And really, I think that opens up a lot more creative avenues for you to break through if you're creative and quality's high and some of these things we've talked about in the past. But really, when I'm listening to some of these artists and bands on Spotify that I've never heard of, and even some of the ones that I've listened to for months and maybe even years now, I have no clue what they look like. I have no clue what their skin color is, hair, how tall, short, weight, age, none. I have no idea. And that's kind of a cool thing that's going on, and it's more accessible than it ever has been before.
Absolutely.
Where now your destiny is more in your own hands because of all these factors, but you just have to be, again, focused on quality and creativity.
Yeah.
Like set yourself apart, and you're only limited in that case by your imagination.
Well, there's that with the creation of what you're doing, but then the only other thing you're limited by is your ability to market yourself. And if you don't know how to market yourself and you don't have a team to help you do that, then buy some good books and read about it. Study and learn how to do it, because it's not going to happen by chance. You actually have to know what the hell you're doing. And so, yeah, creating art, creating something that people can appreciate, creating high quality, beautiful things, even if it's in your own home studio and you're just really good at doing it yourself, there's no age requirement for that. That's a limiting belief. That is something that's holding you back, whether you think you're too young or you're too old or whatever that may be. or like you said, Mike, there's so many limiting stories that we have. Oh, my boobs aren't big enough. You know, like whatever.
I'm not going to make music because my boobs aren't big enough.
Just thought I'd throw that in. Like, no, for real. Like that is the thing. I've heard people say that. I have had artists say that to me, like, oh, I don't have the body. I don't have this. Like,
right. Or, oh, I'm going to wait to make music until I lose weight.
Oh, that's me.
Yeah.
So I've had that narrative has been in my life for decades. So it's like, you know, what is your story? There's so many narratives you could have that are so limiting. And it's interesting because these narratives hold us back in way more in life than just music. I think that we see it so clearly when we're producing music because we know we're putting ourselves out there. We know we're going to be on a stage. We know we're filming. We know that we're doing photo shoots. We're doing all this stuff to promote our music because we know that if we promote ourselves as artists, we're promoting our music. And so, you know, there's kind of a magnifying glass on us and we tend to pick ourselves apart in every way, shape, and form when we go out there and do this. And maybe that's why some people wear masks. Maybe they have terrible stage fright, so they just have to cover it up. You know, you never know why people are doing that or if it's just a gimmick. You just don't. But the whole point of it is that you are not ill-equipped to do this. Those stories are limiting, and they're limiting you everywhere in your life, not just your music. And so it's really shining a light on that and being real with yourself of, oh, you know what? I'm not too fat. Oh, you know what? I'm not too old, or I'm not too young, or I'm not too tall, or you know what? This is a really weird style of music, but I actually have people who've told me they like it. And I'm just going to let my weird shine through a little bit. And so if we can shine a light on these limiting beliefs and on these things that get in our way, that are totally just loops in our heads, and we can say, okay, you know what? I'm done with the story and work through it and prove to ourselves that it's just a story, then we can take off.
Right.
Then there's nothing to hold us back at that point, except for maybe your own knowledge. If you don't, like I said, if you don't know how to market yourself, go learn how to market yourself.
Yeah, but there's books and everything's out there that you need to learn how to do it. But yeah, I think it's just, I think we've restated it several times, but it's just, these stories, they get in your way, and it doesn't matter what it is. Music is just what we're talking about here, but this is with everything in life, obviously. And again, first acknowledge that it's a story, because there is no perfect age to create music.
Oh, do you know what's another really good story that I hear a lot? Here's another one. I don't have enough money.
Yeah.
I don't have money. I can't do it. And to that, I say, go make money.
And to that, I say nay.
That's a story. And if you have that scarcity mentality of, I don't have money, I can't do this because I don't have the finances, then shift that and say, you know what? I have to go make money. Who must I become to be able to make the money I need to make to buy the equipment for my home studio? Who must I become to be able to have the money to afford this amazing person to mix my music, to shoot my music video, to help me out with this, or maybe buy my own gear? But that's just a story. And I know that might trigger some people, like, oh no, I'm poor. It's like, go get a job. Like,
well, even if you have a job but it's not paying a lot, you have other skills, right? Build relationships with people.
Trade some things.
Do trade. Heck, there's plenty of people who are willing to do trade for their services, right? So it's
Absolutely.
Like, hey, come help me build out my new studio and I'll let you record there. Or
my dad did that my whole life. My dad's a contractor and he's an amazing craftsman and carpenter and everything. He can literally build anything from anything. And he's super talented at that. And my parents didn't have a lot of money to invest in my music when I was a kid, but they knew I had huge aspirations. And my dad did everything in his power to trade with people. So he to pay for like a whole year of this singing and dancing group thing I did, he built a stage for them in their studio. And to pay for tons of recording time with this great producer when I was 15 years old, he built out his recording studio. And then the dude owed us time. And so, yeah, that's a great example of do what you have to do. My parents were super scrappy when I was a kid. We did not have a lot of money for that.
Right, which I actually want to take a whole podcast and dive into
being scrappy,
being resourceful, being scrappy.
Ooh, let's do that next time.
All right, everybody. That's going to be our next one.
That's going to be the next one. But yeah, it's interesting because when we have these loops, we become victims to ourselves. and we're held hostage by ourselves. And if you can acknowledge that, like I've been held hostage by myself we've already brought up 2 of them. The age thing gets me every single time. I've had this story that I'm too old since I was 25. So this is crazy. So the other thing too is the weight thing. I like have this image because we did grow up in the 80s and 90s where everything was about, Baywatch and like beautiful babes. And I've always had this image that I've had to be like that. And so even now at age 37, that's a super limiting belief for me. So I'm held hostage by that story. I haven't put things out. I've actually held back in so many areas in the last few years of my life because I'm like, oh, but I'm a mom now. That's another story. I'm a mom. Moms don't do this. Wrong. So, yeah. So what are your limiting beliefs? What are your stories? And I think that brings us to our question.
Yeah.
Right? Really survey your life. And I hope I triggered you a little bit today to like really consider it and really think about it, because most of the problems and issues in our lives are caused by ourselves. And so if you're being held back by a limiting belief or a storyline in your head, what is that storyline? No one else is holding you back but you. So let's get down to the bottom of that and really survey your life. So are you being held back by some of these things we've mentioned, like your age, your weight, your gender? That could be another one. And your money, like your money status, like where all of that is, what's holding you back. And I want you to go to the comments in YouTube or your journal and write it down. And then this follow-up question for that is, what's one step you can take now to start to get past that? What's something you can do to prove to yourself that you're not too old? What's something you can do to prove to yourself that your body is beautiful and you can go do this? So that's it.
Love it.
That's all I got.
Great. Nailed it. All right, everybody. And until next time.
As always. Like, subscribe, share it up. Share the love. Let's help artists all over the place to come together, be this community of support, and to share and share and share.
Yeah, and just tell somebody in passing. Just walk by somebody and be like, hey, you like INVICTA Vox Radio? But share it up. Anyways, guys, until next time.
Peace.